We've got more mics. I mean, I feel like it's getting better. It could be getting better.
I got my own microphone this time.
There's a mic, a mic.
Yeah, we might have enough.
We've gone from 1 mic to 4 mics. We've gone from 2 guys on a rock to 3 guys on a couch.
That is correct. So it feels like we're about ready to start.
Yeah, I would say so.
This
Okay.
episode
Ready?
3 it is.
Welcome.
Yeah, you're the one starting. Sorry. So I'll lean back, give you the floor.
Because I want to have at least some role in this.
But that is your role.
It is my role. So.
You have. Well, what do you mean? It's.
Well, I have a podcast voice.
Yeah, it's our podcast, and now it's also Eli's podcast today.
For today, yes.
Special guest. Wow. Okay, ready?
All right, so take it away, Mr. Black.
Welcome to the 3rd episode of Halfway Café, a podcast all about disc golf course design. I'm Paul Black. We've got Stian Jonsson and a special guest today. It's Eli Swanson.
Here I am.
Yeah, he's
I'm
a touring pro, also well known to be the guy with the longest tournament ace. That's a record. Yeah.
Yep. Well, if there's one course where that record could be broken in here in the next 5-10 years, I think it would be here. It's not too many holes out there that have that opportunity, and hole 1 is right there and ready for somebody to come and take my record. So
okay,
go do it.
Maybe it's you.
Maybe it's me. Maybe I just extend.
Maybe we have a small seat. Or can you have a seat there with 3 players? Maybe not.
Just try our best to ace hole 1.
I did recently find out you can play 2 PDGA events at once, because Ale, they were running a Flex Start C tier on Friday, and I asked, and I said if I wanted to play in the C tier, could I, while playing in the Pro Tour event? So I could have played my first round of the Pro Tour event, played the Flex C tier, and then finished out playing the Pro Tour event on Saturday, Sunday. So, little tidbit of information.
Yeah,
I just never had that scenario.
You're here for 1 more day, so we might have to see about that.
That's a crazy.
You got close on your first. Throw.
Yeah. Hey, 9 meters, nothing to be ashamed at there. In the circle is really, really good on that hole. Any wind, any day. Yeah.
Cool.
You're about to say something, Paul.
Well,
Sorry.
just today's episode, we're going to talk about green design and the design of the green. And what goes into that? What are some of the considerations? What are a few greens in the disc golf realm that we really love? And maybe a couple greens here at Lillelilan that we love. And there's a lot to talk about with that topic. And Eli Swanson is it's something he's interested in. So we're going to run with it.
Yeah.
I like it. But as always, first, Who are you? Eli Swanson. We said you have the world record, but when you're a touring pro, where are you from, and why are you here at Lillelilan?
Well, not a super long story. I don't think. I've loved disc golf ever since I picked up a disc. Just the flight has always been inspiring to me to watch and try and create shots and just have fun with the game. And I've just tried to continue to progress a little bit in my skills year over year, and it's led me to some incredible places and to know some incredible people. But yeah, I grew up in Wisconsin, went to the University of Minnesota, studied environmental geography there, and last year, right after I graduated, I came over here to Europe to play the Disc Golf Pro Tour events, all the way from the Norway Open to, when did I leave? What was the last tournament? It was the championship over in Estonia, the Baltic Championship. So I stayed nearly 3 months.
Oh, you went to Timo's course. Matagusa.
Yes. Yep. So yeah, I've been here in Europe for a while now, and just really, really enjoyed it last year, and knew it was a priority to come back and see some more of Europe, and more specifically of Norway as well, because this is such a beautiful country. And yeah, and then since right when I got over here, I said I'll be spending some time around Europe, and Stian, or Paul, I don't know who. Do you manage? You manage the account
Yes,
on
yes.
Instagram?
Mhm.
Yeah. Then,
Yeah, I think I sent you a message.
yes, you sent me a message and you were like, "Hey, you should swing by." And it was already on my list. I remember seeing or talking to Clay last year at Norway Open right after he had won the RPM Open that year, and he had spoken highly of this place. So I knew I wanted to get here at some point in my life, and well, here I am.
Here you are. And staying one day longer because of basketball, but that's for another podcast.
Yeah.
Maybe don't play basketball full
In-
court while on tour.
Well, just or have proper shoes, maybe.
Or have
would be better. Yeah.
Yes.
But no, I'm staying here longer too because it's just so enjoyable and beautiful, and yeah, what a place! And you guys have been so welcoming, and yeah, it's been great.
You're staying in a tent.
I'm staying in a tent, but the tent is fantastic. As far as tents go, it's high up on the list. So
Perfect.
yeah.
Close the whole one. So
Yep.
you can dream about your next world record pace.
Yep.
Perfect. All right. Before we get into the topic, we have some people message us about last week's
Yeah.
topic.
Feedback.
Yeah, and also someone that didn't send us their thoughts on motivation before we recorded.
That's
and
right.
I said, no worries, we'll do more episodes. So.
Yeah, in the last episode we talked about what motivates us as course designers. Why do we spend hours and hours on the course? And we received a bunch of good answers, and so you've got a couple more?
I have some. I think you maybe have some. I have 3,
you first.
4 maybe? Okay, I can start. So this one is from Cactus Rock. That is Dylan Cease's property, which is designed by Paul Macbeth, I think.
Yes. Yep.
Looks incredible. I've been going a little bit back and forth with them, sending some messages. Last year we got a cactus to put that on one of our rocks, because we have a lot of rocks, as you've seen
Yes.
now, Eli. And something happened to the cactus. It's not with us anymore.
Yeah. But, well, it's tough to have a cactus in Norway.
Yeah. Did the winter just kind of get to it?
Yeah,
a
so
little bit?
now I found a guy, Cactus Man. So he has cactuses that can withstand anything but time, I guess. It's not going to break down in our lifetime.
Yeah.
So it's made out of petroleum products.
So we're not.
It looks good.
We're not
So
giving up.
we're getting a...
We're not giving up on the cactus on a
No,
rock. idea.
we do homages to
Yes.
other great projects and
Yeah.
people and things. And
right.
Yeah.
so there will be a cactus on a rock at Little Leland at some point. But we just got to go meet the Cactus Man. Okay, so Cactus Rock. They say this is about motivation. A Cactus Rock, we want to create an experience for disc golfers that they have never had before. Whether that's in the nature and scenery, or maybe a really nice tee pad. Maybe they've never thrown a shot or shaped a line like they have to here. A big part of why we spend so much time out on the course is for those moments when you're sitting in a parking lot and all around you, you hear chains ringing, laughter, all the tree kicks. There's something about the sound of people out playing and enjoying themselves that makes it all worth it. Because at the end of the day, we do it for the sport and the people that love it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Love it.
It's wonderful. Yeah, I was lucky enough to visit that property earlier this year. So
Nice.
yeah, I got a first-hand look at it, and yeah, we got to walk around and just see all of the things they've been doing, and the amount of bulldozing and moving ground and cutting trees and building benches and bridges and all the same stuff of all the courses that we know and love. And
It looks like they're
yeah.
putting a lot of effort into it.
The Williams brothers they're 3 of the hardest working guys I know. They're impressive to watch get out there and
I've heard there was a
tackle
guy
projects.
last year. He played RPM Open. He'd been there. Knew the Williams brothers.
yeah,
What was
yeah.
his name? Matt? No, Matthew Brown.
Yeah, from
Oh yes,
down
Yep.
south somewhere.
Yeah, Georgia, perhaps.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think,
I believe. Yeah. I know Matthew. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I have one.
Yep.
From my dye guy, Brian Redman.
Wait a minute. You have a dye guy?
Yeah, he's the guy that dyes my discs.
All right.
And he's also been hosting a series of events called the Speakeasy, Aces Fly Dye Speakeasy. But basically, they would pop up a course somewhere and invite people to come and play non-sanctioned fun events. And so he says, after the first Speakeasy course we did at Billy Creek a few years ago, it was just a no-brainer. Before the event even started, I saw so many smiling faces. I'd already decided not to play and just walk from card to card to feel that vibe I saw. Every event since has felt the same. Build it right, and they will come, and leave with a smile. Similar phrase we've said around here before. Build it, and they will come. A little Field of Dreams.
Yeah, what movie is that from? Is it like Bodyguard or something? With Kevin Costner? I don't know.
Swingers? No, I believe it's a film called Field of Dreams. Anyway.
Kevin Costner.
Yeah. And
so the wind is blowing for you, those of you who are only listening.
he also mentions that another friend of mine, Gabe and I spent hours in the woods during COVID just imagining what could be. We set 9 to 18 hole course with flags all over the place no one still knows about. So kind of a secret course. And he says, find someone who enjoys building it with you, and there is no better friendship. Keep enjoying the journey. I'm loving it, says Brian Redman. So thank you for the feedback about motivation. Very cool.
But I can relate to that. We're slowly building a friendship on the course with our trimmers and...
Yeah. Yeah, it's nice when you have a partnership around a grand project like this. You can team up. It's makes the work a little easier.
And I think it's also a time for the people listening. Last time we had some things on the table.
Yeah.
So this time I gave you a task, Paul, and I gave Eli a task. Go and find things to have on the table that we can talk about. So the listeners have to go watch the YouTube.
Yeah,
What did you find, Paul?
Or they don't have to watch. They can benefit from our descriptive skills.
Exactly.
And we can learn a little bit about how to describe the things. But what we have here is a Lego creation of a pirate ship. Okay? And flags, the ship, the bow, the stern, thank you. The various parts of the ship are there in Legos.
Yes.
Yep.
And it's impressive. Did your kids make that?
Probably, yes.
Yeah.
How many crew members do we have there? I guess that's a good question for the listeners. How many crew members do we have? So now you have to go over, watch the video, and count them up.
I don't even know.
And leave your answer in the comments.
Yeah, we might not be able to verify your answer.
And some of them might not even be crew members. Maybe they are captives or slaves.
Yeah.
Well, the pirates didn't have slaves.
This guy seems to be the captain, though, with the little peg leg and the hat.
The
that's
captain
different
doesn't
than the
usually steer the boat, does he? Maybe he's in his quarters doing captainly things. But this podcast is not about pirates. So, but Eli, what did you go and find? Did you find something?
Yes, I found.
Oh, you
this,
brought the
Yeah, I have a T sign hidden over in the corner.
You have a T sign.
Yeah, old hole 6 T sign.
Yeah, hand drawn by me and the kids.
Yes. Yep.
People didn't like them, so I took them down. Sad. Shame on you, peoples.
Well, we have it here in the podcast to remember forever.
We'll put them on a wall somewhere, I think. That would be nice. In the clubhouse.
Yep.
Old tea signs. Decorate the wall with it.
Those were inspiring to me when I had an event in Pumpkin Hollow. I also did hand-colored pencils and hand drew the T signs.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. And so it's an idea. It was inspiring.
Yeah. I think it can give you an idea of like how the whole forms in your mind, of like forcing yourself to draw each tree and see the line in a different medium almost.
Interesting.
That's a good one.
I also have a couple discs here, and one signature Sandnesdalseth that I picked up in Sandnes at the recent Norwegian National Championships.
Oh, we haven't talked about that.
And so
we should at least mention it.
Yes.
So Paul Black went and played an event. I'm not gonna. What did you do?
All
you
right,
played.
all right. It was the Norwegian National Champions Cup, and I was allowed to play as a foreigner, but I'm not allowed to win a title
Yeah.
because that still remains
sense.
for the Norwegians. It's
Yeah.
the Norwegian tour, and so, well, I won the MP40 division,
Congratulations.
and so not eligible to win a medal, nor am I asking for it.
No.
It's a W on my PDGA stat sheet.
Yeah.
And a win is a win, and they're rare and hard to get, and so I felt very proud and happy.
You did say before you left. I remember you said, second, that's not an option. I'll take third, but I'm going to win, or something like that.
It's true, and it's probably because I've taken 2 second-place finishes earlier in the season, one at Waco and one in Colorado, and so I was just kind of tired of second place.
So that's
And I've
some
heard,
motivation.
I've heard
maybe.
Gannon Burr say whoever wants to win it the most will win, and I think there was a lot of desire. You know, there was a want. I wanted it.
I like
so
it.
Maybe there's something to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. I brought 2 shotgun shells and some silver bullets, just in case werewolves. Since we're in the woods. And
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Anything else to add?
I think we're good.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll move on to one of Europe's most designers. Well, one of the one of the guys, designers in Europe who has designed the most courses. I think this isn't. I should probably research it, but it's Pasi Koivu. You probably heard of him. You should have. Anyway, he's the one that designed and co-designed Kippasu, Heinola,
Yep.
in Finland, and the Åland Island courses, the
yes.
16, the big project they did
Yeah.
during COVID, and Västra Kalmar, which is their like tour level championship course. So he's designed over 100 courses in Europe, which is a lot.
Yeah.
Most people haven't played 100 courses.
Yeah, exactly. I'm happy to have designed one course, and
Yeah.
so he says, "Hi Stian, sounds interesting. Here is my answer. My motivation to design courses is built on the fact that someone will find his or her new favorite hobby when I do my job well. Bigger and more complex projects require lots of disc golf experience, but also a skill to kind of like solve puzzles. When you get all the holes to work together, it's like solving a Rubik's Cube."
It's true.
Yeah.
That's a good one.
Yeah, it's like a puzzle. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, that's very interesting. I talked to, I actually was lucky enough to play Cactus Rock with Paul Macbeth.
All right.
He came by on the tour, and he mentioned a similar sort of thing. That course actually flows in a four-leaf clover type of shape. And so holes 1 through, I believe it's 5, are like one of the loops, and then hole 6 through 9, next loop, and then 11 or 10 through 13, and then it's 14 through
Wow.
the end are these loops.
Intentionally?
Yeah, somewhat intentionally. Yeah, I think I don't think he set out with that in mind, but as it kind of took shape and as he found holes, it kind of became that. So yeah, there's easy access at multiple points on the course.
Smart.
And yeah, solving a puzzle is a really good way to put it. I often think about that. I'm designing a course with my dad on our family land back in Wisconsin, and I definitely, we have, there's swampy areas and there's hilly areas and there's all these different things, and you have to piece together what you want the flow to look like. And I think that's a very important aspect of course design in general.
Yeah.
Is how does the course flow together, and are players going to have to walk from a long way from one hole to the next, and if you can keep that down, it improves everybody's mood of what the course feels like to them.
Four-leaf clover.
Yeah.
I like it. It reminds me a little bit about Song Festival grounds in Tallinn. That goes around the thing.
Yep.
All right, I have a couple more. This one is from Daniel, who was here a week ago
Yeah.
from Germany from Bremen. Drehmoment Bremen, I think the club
Is
is.
it the club where Simon Lizotte was from?
So, yeah. So he says, for me as a TD and also part of the leaderboard of our local disc golf club, my motivation is really easy, and you hear it before. For the smile and the joy of the people. I love to lift people up in a lot of ways. For example, making the course better, make better organization, better tournaments, better side games, better jerseys, make everything better. Thanks for the shout out to me, Paul. And please write that book. I would love to read it.
Oh, here we go.
Love the podcast. Thanks, see ya.
Speaking of motivation, there's some motivation to write the book.
Wow. Wow.
But,
That's what we've been saying. It can always be better.
Yeah.
That's a good mindset. Not just be happy with. Well, you shouldn't be happy. I mean, it shouldn't be a stressful thing that you feel like you have to make it better. It should be, or if it's to where you want to make it better. I think that's the difference.
Yeah.
Maybe. All right, two more. No, one more. So this is from Simon at Ale Disc Golf Center, one of the new owners, creators. There are three. It's Vincent, Simon, and Eric. So this is from Simon. I asked him what motivates him at Ale. So he says, what motivates me at Ale is to try and be a pioneer, to explore parts of disc golf through a disc golf center that is yet to be explored, and also to strive towards the perfect balance between keeping the spirit or the magic of disc golf, and in my case the magic of Ale, but at the same time progress as the sport grows. And of course the biggest motivation of all is seeing disc golfers having a great time at our facility. Beginners, amateurs or pros, doesn't matter. The love for the sport is what unites us all.
Nice.
Yeah. The same thing I think we talked about last episode. That to be a beacon or something that can inspire others.
Yeah, and I'm glad we started the podcast with that topic of motivation and what inspires us and others. And it may be something we revisit in the future, just because it's a rich one. It seems to. We just got so many great answers from other designers. So.
and it ties into the fabric of every part of course design too.
Exactly, and I'm thinking about it all the time when I'm out there. And I'm also motivated by a bad U-Disc review.
Right.
It kind of pisses me off a little bit.
Yeah.
For a while, and then I think, well, it's their experience. I might try and do something about it.
Yep.
It's hard to get all the flies to disappear in the middle of June or July, but
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
try with every leaf and tree and everything. The more air we let through. So this year the horses are not on the course as much. That helps. There's not as much horse shit,
Yeah.
and the horse shit that is left behind by the horses. The horse people, the horse girls, they throw it away.
Yeah.
So that Lena has been really strict. Like, okay, now before you're allowed to go ride, you have to take the shit from
Yeah.
hole 14.
Yeah, I like it.
Yep.
Yeah, we can't control the weather either. It might rain on you and
Yeah,
Yep.
make it a little harder, but
yeah. But what motivates you, Eli? You also have a project, the course project. You are
Yeah.
touring.
Yeah.
You're back in Europe. There's
I think what motivates me is somewhat similar to what others would say. I think the thing I would maybe add to, wanting to see just better courses and good design and people enjoying themselves is just I would like to find ways to push the sport and push how we think about courses, and that's why I'm interested to talk about green design today. is because I think that we can do more than we have been, and I think I want other people to be able to visually see what we as course designers are trying to do. And you know, it's something that oftentimes you can't. It's hard for newer players to understand what goes into a design, or why certain trees are left in the fairway, and what shots are being suggested, I guess, to the players, because ultimately disc golf should be creative. There should be options. It shouldn't be one standard shot on every single hole. You might have one or two holes on a course where there's a pretty specific line, and that's, you're all going to be throwing a very similar shot. But yeah, I just want to see more disc golfers playing the game, and I think that comes from better design and better conscious decision making over time.
Yeah, there's a lot of good points there to circle back to, I think, on the topic of greens, and a lot of topics really on course design. We've written down a lot, and it keeps, when I'm trimming, I have to stop all the time, because I think of new things. Oh, we should talk about this, and I like the idea of just breaking it down to just, sometimes we may go for 20 minutes, or today we might go for an hour and a half, who knows. We've already gone for some time, but it doesn't matter.
Yep.
This isn't the podcast for the masses. I think this is.
No.
Well, maybe if you like some Americans and Norwegians.
Yeah, let's not sell ourselves short.
Yeah. I think I want to add one thing to that as well. As one of the reasons I enjoy course design too is I just enjoy learning about the process, and so I've been lucky. I feel like over the past year or so, I've had more course design opportunities, and not necessarily just like me designing the course, but just to be able to have discussions and talk about things and understand why other course designers are doing things the way they are, and then add that into my own mind before I go back and finalize the course that I'm working on, that I'm so passionate about on my property or my parents' land. Yep. And being able to kind of bring a collection of ideas back to that course, and I think that's something you've brought up while I've been here, is just making an homage here and there on different holes to other courses and what they've done, and doing it in your own way, but still understanding that what they made as a design choice was a very good one.
Yeah, and just saying, we see you. This is my way of saying thank you. You have inspired us, and yeah. I like it. All right, so do you want to intro us into the topic, or?
Yeah, I mean, let's
where are we? What's behind us?
Sure. I mean, here we are on the deck of the house. We're looking behind us is the green of hole 18, which is a super fun downhill shot. The basket is placed on an old stump, a tree stump, so it's a bit elevated, and the green slopes down in a way. So it can be a quite elevated putt depending on where you are on the green.
Yeah. I think that's a great starting point for getting into the technicalities of green design, is understanding like where that starts, where the green design starts, and it starts on the approach shot. And so whether that's a tee shot on a par 3 or an approach shot on a par 4 or 5, that's why you're creating the green. That's how you're looking at challenges, or that's at least how I'm looking at challenges, is what you need to be looking at what the player is able to accomplish from that approach shot. And is it too much? Can we get them to play to the right side of the green as opposed to the left side? And finding out where those misses are on the green, and what players are going to want to be able to do, and what they can do with the discs that they're kind of expected to throw on those shots.
I see, yeah, because sometimes you'll see on one side of the green some obstacles, trees or a bush or something, which encourages the player to try to land on the other side of the green to have access for a good putt.
Exactly.
Is that something you're trying to design into your...
Yes, yeah, I think the reason I talk about approaches is just that it gives a good framework to set up how you're going to look at a green. And if we talk about 18 specifically, there, if it's sloping front to back, you're going to want to land short of the basket, so that because the slope is going to pull it down regardless.
Yeah.
You land short, you can hopefully slide and end up in line with the basket, pin high, as it were.
Yeah.
But yeah, finding those approaches and those shots, and I don't think we should be afraid as course designers to put obstacles on the green, because the approach shots are, as skill level increases in disc golf, we've seen such a jump in how many players are able to get to that 1030, 1040, 1050 mark. It used to be Paul at 1050, and then we had 1030 players after that. A few guys breaking into the low 1030s and maybe mid 1030s, and now we have just this barrage of players who've moved themselves to the top, and anyone can win. Although when Gannon looks as dominant as he did at Preserve, who knows? But as we do that, the more technical we can get, it allows us to step back from having to force the distance element as much. And I think there's only a certain point that we're going to be able to push the distance element to anyway. And so we need to find ways to strike a balance between distance and control and approaches, and what can players accomplish, and how tight of a gap is too tight of a gap. And I'd love to see an analytical breakdown. This is something I don't know exactly where I'd start to do this, but I wouldn't be surprised if Chuck Kennedy has done something like this. He's kind of a math numbers guy a lot of the time, but I'd love to see what gap distances at what, and maybe we could test Pro Tour players on this, but from how far can you reliably hit a gap and call it a fair approach? Or what size gap, right? So if you have a 5 meter wide gap, how far back can I be and call it fair to get through that and up to a green, whether it's a forehand shot, backhand shot, whatever. And that can kind of dictate how we're able to kind of start the green. And
you use the term fair, and we often hear that when people comment about a green, the fairness
yes
of the green or the gap in order to get to the green.
Yep.
So that's something interesting to think about, because you're designing it for a particular level of players. So
exactly.
if we're thinking about the red course here, then we want that gap to be just a little bigger because of the quality of player that we're designing for. But if you're thinking about Pro Tour guys, then it should be much more difficult, challenging.
Exactly. Yeah. I think fair it's a word that we need to define too, because I think too many people hear the word fair and think that the entire green needs to be perfectly open and fair, and I can putt from anywhere with any style I want, and that's not what I think we should be shooting for. I think we should be looking at saying, okay, the particular area where we want you to land on the green, that's the section that's fair. And so if I want you to land short, I don't want a bunch of rocks and random elements and trees in that section that I can kick and go to a random place on the green. If I land my disc at the right, at a good speed, with a good pace and on a good angle, it should stay on that part of the green, and then I have my fair open putt. And if I don't do that on my approach, then I think we can kind of, I'd like to start seeing courses push the boundary of how harsh we can get on because of course there's a point that's going to be too far, but I think we haven't necessarily explored that as much as we have explored just the standard stock. Okay, here's the green, there's a couple of trees, and it looks kind of nice.
We talked about that on hole 9 yesterday when we played here, the hole before the halfway cafe.
Yes.
Where you threw a faster disc, hit the trees, and then you dropped, and then after we were looking at it, all right, so I want to land here and then maybe skip up. I don't want to land too close to the basket. There's some OB behind the basket, but there is, and I said that, okay, we're going to put more sand here to cover some of these rocks that are sticking up after we dug, but before the basket you can land and it's just grass,
Yep.
That's,
Yeah, exactly. I think that's exactly what I'm talking about. That hole comes to kind of a point in the backside of the green, and what we said, it was like 3.5 meters on one side and maybe 5 on the other from the OB section. And I think that's a great start because those trees short. So unless you're skipping up perfectly on the low line, those trees are going to block you and drop you down to 10 meters maybe, or you can get a little closer depending where you're at, or if you get the right kick off a tree. And there's always going to be some parts of that luck. We can't exactly build a wall that is going to stop every disc at the appropriate distance and then take the wall away so players can still putt from that distance.
Yeah, or like
so
you
there's
said,
gonna be
you might
but
throw a slower disc next time to
Yep.
control it more and then
Yes.
land shorter. And
land shorter, and then I am
skip.
putting at OB, and so then it becomes a decision on the green for the player as to what do I want to do. How confident do I feel? I feel a ripping headwind at 20 miles an hour or whatever, then maybe I don't want that putt. I'm just going to pitch it up. So the more we can get players to think by the way we design greens, I think the better our game is going to be.
So what we're saying is that as long as there is a part of the green where it's fair, or that kind of brings us into one of my words or notes I've written down, is the surface, or what do we want the green? Do we want it to be sand,
Right.
wood chips, rocks? Probably not. Gravel, turf, artificial turf.
Yeah.
What is there such a thing as no greens should be? Because we take a lot from ball golf, and in ball golf all the greens are the same. They're
Yep.
super duper high quality grass, and but
Right.
it's different with the ball rolling and everything. But of course, but should there be some sort of standard maybe, or what do you prefer as a player?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's hard to beat like just perfectly manicured grass, with nice, not wet soil, but sticky soil to a point of soft enough that you're going to land and be in a good spot. I think none of us really want to come into a green. I think a lot of players on the Pro Tour I've heard complain when there's just a rock at the base of a basket, and then it's like, oh, well, I threw a perfect shot and it digs, but it skips up and hits this rock, and then my disc is all chunked. And so I think avoiding that in those sections that I was talking about of being the fair side of the green, and making sure that players' discs aren't getting damaged too much. But I have no problem with sand. I have no problem with artificial turf. I think that looks a little bit more on, again, it's artificial. It just looks a little more on the side that I prefer nature. That's one of the reasons I love disc golf, is just the natural element and being able to be out in these beautiful environments.
Yep.
So I'd prefer natural things, but I think as far as keeping players' discs, especially on the tour, we have such a fine line between what is a good disc and what is now out of the bag and back into the car.
But
It's a
that
backup,
does that does it depend on, say, a lot of the holes? Unfortunately, maybe there's very long par threes, and it's hard to park something
Yeah.
with a fast disc from 500 feet or 450. I remember Paul Macbeth said once in some practice video or whatever it was that we've lost the touch.
Yep.
We talked about yesterday that used to be all putters and slow discs, and now
Yeah.
we have all these fast discs. People made holes longer, and now we see like maybe that wasn't so smart. So, but doesn't that depend on, you don't want that rock on a 450 par 3, but maybe you want it on, when your approach is a more touchy approach, you can put the
Yes.
basket on a rock or build up.
Yep.
Because I've seen many greens built up with rocks,
Yep.
which looks incredible. But
Yeah.
then there is sections with grass where you can, because coming in super fast and hitting whatever part of the basket, the disc might also skip. But then on those longer par threes,
Yep.
maybe you then have to the right or left or in front or whatever,
Yeah.
maybe sand.
Yep.
Because then your fast disc won't skip.
Right.
It's hard
Yeah.
to aim for a small part of sand from. But-
That's the cool part about all this, is I think there isn't one right answer to anything,
Exactly.
and I think every hole can be a little bit different. And the hole that I was thinking of the most was last year's World Championships at New London Tech, and it had it was hole 10, and the green had a big boulder that the rock sat on, and it had those kind of poles as well. I don't know if you guys know the hole at all, but
Yeah, well,
it was one, and that was 425 foot, something like that, 440 maybe, somewhere in there, par 3. So you're right. A lot of players, the reason they were annoyed is probably is because there's less control to be had on a hole like that as opposed to a putter approach. for sure. But I really like what you said about, we've been, and pointing to Paul's point about taking longer holes and trying to like cut back and make a little shorter. And that's where this like super technical green design, I think, can come into play. Of where we start to put trees in circle one, where we start to, look at OB in circle one. And another thing, I don't want to jump the gun too much. I don't know how fast paced we want to do. There's so much to talk about. But Paul Ulibarri brought this up. I was talking with him a little while back. And this is more of a stat keeping thing, but I think of it as he said that the green could be just defined as whatever the course designer thinks is the green. So the circle in one section could be 12 meters instead of 10 because it's a wide open straight putt. But if you're 6 meters over here and there's a bush in your way, maybe you're circle 2, right? And
we just got to get rid of circle 1 and circle 2. Course designers should define the green. I agree 100%.
Yeah.
We've designed the course, we've built the course, we've made the course. This is our green.
Yep.
And this is a green hit, and this is not the green hit.
Yes.
That should be the thing.
Exactly. Yeah, and we can still have, I think the Pro Tour can still keep their stats however they want to with circle 1, circle 2, but if
That could be for
it's a
how you
chosen
jump or
green,
not, or-
the chosen green is circle 1, and then anything outside of that is maybe circle 2.
Maybe, yeah.
Up to a certain distance or whatever the case. So we can, I'm sure other people can chat about how that technicality works in the stat keeping world, but I think as far as course design goes, the designer of the green should know
on those
what it is.
things. That's where I like to be. What Simon Aral also talked about, that he wants to inspire or be someone that's on the front of like innovation, because we need more innovation. That's always good. Try new things, and that's something us as course designers can be a part of, as long as we don't do like crazy mini golf things we're throwing through dragons' mouths and
Spinning windmills.
it's a different place for everything, of course, but it's like
Yeah, if we're talking about elite courses or courses we are expecting to play tournaments on, I guess, because I think those fun courses, there's I forget what the course name is in Texas, but there's that one that's like what is it, like Flying Armadillos, maybe, or I might be wrong, but they have they have all these crazy signs, and you can ace by throwing it through a slide and stuff.
Super fun.
Those have their place, but they're not tournament courses, and I think what we're focused on here in this podcast, at least from what I could tell, having listened to the last episode and being here now, is we're trying to look at tournament play and like the majority of courses and what course designers can.
But also like we
can apply to that.
touch to try and, like our red course here is more for the not beginners maybe, but it's a lot less challenging, but still challenging, and it's shorter, but there's also like you said, Paul, the level you're trying to reach or design to factors into how you build the greens.
Yeah, if it's your neighborhood club course, it might be one thing, but if we're talking about the top guys in the world, we might try to make those greens a little more challenging.
Yeah, like for instance, you see on many courses where there's potential rollaway, they'll build up a few boards or planks just to make players happier. You wouldn't do that in that same way on a high level championship course. Just put some boards because it might roll.
Maybe
Depends.
not. I mean, we talked about this exact thing, and this is the reason I picked this tee sign here.
Hole 6.
Hole 6. we number one yesterday, out of the blue, we changed an OB line to allow players to get a little more aggressive coming into that green, and then we talked about putting boards there for the rollaway on that shot.
Yeah, it was because I threw a putt up and it hit the cage and rolled down, which is fine, a rollaway.
Yep.
But it rolled all the way OB, and we thought maybe that's a little too punishing.
Yep.
And while we were discussing it, I threw the putt and said demonstration number 1. It rolls out of bounds. Perfect timing.
Yep.
And then the next moment, we were moving the OB stakes about 1.5 meters or maybe 2 meters back,
Yep.
So that rollaway would go all the way down the hill, but not quite be OB.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, I
the
think
added-
it would have stopped. And then the added bonus was
What?
that the approach becomes
Yeah.
more, or players will want to be more aggressive on the approach. Because when I first walked up that hill, I looked at the green and I was like, wow, I hadn't thrown a very good couple of shots and I was kind of approaching from a different spot. But if I was attacking from the landing zone, I don't know that I would want to go for that as much in a tournament. I might want to just turn over a safe shot and pitch up and get out of there with a par. And I think allowing players to kind of get a little more aggressive and find the green and then find those challenges on the green is important too.
And it's just, that's going back to motivation and also fun and why we do it. That yesterday we talked about, well, we should maybe move the OB line. And when I know, as the main designer on the course, now it's me and Paul going back and forth, and now you're, I know, well, I have no arguments against this. There's no reason to not move the OB. And then we did it.
Yep.
And it gave me so much joy, and it was just, we instantly made something better right there.
Yeah. No, it was great to see, and I think that's one general thing that all course designers should be trying to keep an open mind. And for you to just make that change in the moment right there, because we saw it as a good thing and found a couple reasons that it should be changed, it's like that's amazing. Like, that's something I think too many course designers can sometimes get caught up in the feelings of, oh, I made this design, it's my creation, I want to hold on to that as long as possible. And I think, you need to be flexible and understand.
And it doesn't
that not
change. The T sign is still going to be, because it was only 1.5 meters, and
exactly,
like the measurements on a T sign, it wouldn't.
Yeah.
If anything, it's more correct now, the T sign.
Yeah.
So.
Yep.
And it highlights the process too, because what we needed was some data to see players play the hole. It is one of the most difficult holes on the course in tournament play.
Yeah.
Either one or two most difficult. And I think we want to see people getting aggressive from the landing zone up the hill to the green. And so you have to see the players play it, get feedback from guys like you, like, hey, I'd probably play this safe.
Yep.
Well, we want to see you get aggressive, so let's make this change. And it's just like, there's your process.
Yep.
It's not going to all be there right at the beginning necessarily. You need some of that player data to happen, get some feedback, and then make some adjustments. And I think that's what we're doing here, and probably see that a lot of people, designers adjusting things from year to year, even with Pro Tour events.
Yep.
But going back to that, not going back, but continuing on that green, because another thing we talked about is that now we're on to more like a beautification thing, but that goes hand in hand in this case with, because we have that insane cliff behind the basket, but there's well, not a lot, but there's a few oak trees and a couple of trees blocking. You can see the cliff, but by taking out a few trees, it's just going to be, it's almost like you have to tilt your head just to see the sky, because it's only like 30-40 meters maybe, but it's so straight in the air that it's just insane. So we're talking about, me and Paul, like, we got to take down those trees. We talked about it yesterday. Our plan is maybe take these trees and use the 2 oak trees as like to build a level, and have the digger man come and level like under the basket section, and then we can put some sand, because then back to what you're saying, because you're going from way down there with a fast disc,
Yep.
and you want the good shot to be rewarded.
Yep.
If you hit close to the basket, there's sand maybe, so that you stay, but if you aren't high enough, you might hit the logs and then roll, but not OB.
Yeah. Ideally.
Anymore.
You're right. I mean, that green and that wall is one of the most impressive features I've seen on a disc golf course. So opening that up and looking at it straight away is going to be really, really fun. And
It's going to be so good.
Yeah. It's exciting to think about.
Well, that's. I can read one here from. I have gotten one. Because you chose the topic, there wasn't really time to reach out and ask people.
Right.
Well, I did, but Clay Edwards is the only one that have answered about the greens so far. So I asked him, what comes to mind when you picture not a perfect, but like a great, amazing disc golf green? What do you think about if I just say disc golf green? How do you want it to be? So he said, he voiced it to Instagram, and I couldn't, so I had to write it. So it's 98% accurate of what Clay said. Here we go. To me, what comes to mind is something that is manicured, with little details like stones or wood or turf sometimes. You know, when there has been work put into make the green look nice. I also enjoy danger on the green. A slope behind the basket, a little elevation. I love a course where several greens have danger. I think that is a skill players need to be tested on. Just sticking a basket on a giant pole with advertisement around the pole isn't the best way to do it. I like natural slopes, a little bit of elevation and very well manicured. Deathy. I like that.
That's great. That's great. Yeah, Clay is an experienced player, and that's very valuable right there to think about. I look at that, and I had kind of a question that I was going to pose to both of you, so I'll do that now. What he brings up, there should be a few greens on the course that are challenging. What do you think each is the right number of greens to be challenging? And I'm sure it varies per course, per layout, but on perhaps an elite level, let's just say, on a gold course for the best players, how many of those greens should be like extremely challenging, and then how many should have like a middle level of challenging, and then how many should be kind of easier greens? Like, is there a correct spread? Do you go 6-6-6 or in that sort of sense, or do you?
I think you want to achieve some balance. So whether it's 6-6-6 or half and half, I think there was a point you brought up yesterday about the balancing the difficulty of the hole. Let's say it's a par 3 and the shot isn't that difficult, then I think let's make the green more challenging.
Right.
If it's a par 4 and it's two very challenging shots, maybe the green has fewer challenges.
Yep.
That's kind of how I would think through it.
Yep.
It's like you said, what gap is fair? The approach shot to the green is what determines how the green should be. Of course, you're working with the natural details of what you have.
Yeah.
And the looking for, like on hole 11, we have the most beautiful sloping greens, and we often say, you know, the farmers of old made this.
Yeah.
And we joke about the disc golf gods creating it for us.
400 years ago.
Yeah, right. But then taking into consideration the shots getting to the green, I think is how I would balance it.
Yep.
What about you, Stian?
No, I think it's if you're still on 11, there's challenge to get to the green.
Yep.
But then the green is large and it's grass, it's some moss, so it's not as skippy.
Yep.
And it's all around the basket. There's a lot of space, more on the approach.
Yeah.
There's a few trees and some bunker bushes and things you have to miss coming into it. But I think it can come in with whatever speed of disc.
Yeah, and it's going to land and stick on that green.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're also often hitting into the slope, I think, into the upslope on that green. And so that's going to deaden a lot of shots even more.
And similar on hole 1 here, which there is nothing 60 meters from the basket or something.
Yeah.
Well, left side maybe 35
It
meters.
is sloping down on the front side, but it is just
but
pretty
the tee is 244 meters from the basket.
So
then
so good luck landing in circle 1.
Yeah.
the tree is well, Eli did it.
Yeah, I mean, Eli did it.
Too easy yesterday. I only had a few putter practice shots and then went ahead to
almost ace the.
Ooh, I'm the farthest one.
Hey, you know, I got to take my humble brags when I can.
Yeah, I mean, that's the reason why. That's how I first, or the first time I saw your name or even knew who you were. It was some Instagram film.
Yeah.
I think I said, "Ooh, I have a challenge for you. Come here and improve your record."
Yes.
Something I
Yep.
commented or whatever.
I do remember that. Yep. And yeah, I had heard of the course before that, but that put it back in my mind of when I come back to Europe this year, I want to get here and play it and throw that shot.
But back to your question, I think it's what I get a lot of questions when I work in the military, when I am teaching, and I always say, or many times say, it depends. Because it depends.
Mm-hmm.
It depends on, for instance, here we have a lot of elevation. There's a lot of up and down. It's a course that requires a lot from you on angles and everything, and mental stamina and physical stamina.
Yep.
So that also ties into the number.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, I kind of like to frustrate players, but it has to be fair.
Yeah.
It has to. I don't want to mess with someone's mind. I don't want to. I heard Eagle and Simon talk about it, and Joey on their Crushed Pepper podcast. It's about there's a lot of courses. If they could just have a couple of hours with a chainsaw to take some branches here and there. But then there's so many that no, we're keeping that branch. That branch has always been there. It's not going anywhere. It's my branch.
Yeah.
Well, that also depends, right? Me and Paul were on 17 today, and maybe this branch has sagged a little bit, because trees, they sprout new, and the branches grow bigger, and then they and the snow and So we took down, I don't know, 6 branches on the opening mouth where you come out of the tunnel.
You kind of have to get through this fair gap,
Right.
but some branches that kind of like getting into it a little.
Yeah.
So we trimmed those out. And
Exactly.
we went one at a time.
In case Simon and Eagle comes with their chainsaw, So now
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think you should challenge.
Yeah.
I think you should challenge as much as you can. But there's also a place for like hole 12 here. I told you yesterday this is a fairly open, stress-free par 4 with no OB, rolling hills, rock walls, rock piles for farmers of old.
Yep.
And it just rooms and goes, and it's all really beautiful. The green, there's really nothing to hit, but there's like, of course, trees on the sides a little bit. And
There is a slope on that green too. It's not
a
that
little
green
bit.
does not
And
exist
the
without
basket
challenge.
is this much higher than all the other baskets.
Oh yeah.
Just like I said, I like to mess with players a little bit.
Yep.
I have seen players 5 putts on it.
Yeah. Back and forth.
But but it's
that's
fair. Everything around it. It's huge area around which is there's no.
It reminds me a little bit of. It's more elevated than this, but Ale hole 18. And I talked to a number of players that was the last Pro Tour event here in Europe, but I talked to a number of players in that subtle little mound that basket is on. The basket isn't any higher than normal. I mean, it is because of the mound, but that messed with so many players' putts. And you look at it, and it's like on that final card, watching them come in, I think Daniel missed a putt, and then Ricky missed the putt that could have forced something. And there were a number of other players throughout the week that I saw miss putts on that hole, and just that little bit of elevation raise, and then there's so much wind coming through that space as well. It's like that's a subtlety that green design is great with. It can be great in a number of ways. It doesn't have to be this extravagant show like a green. I did want to segue to this at some point, but the green in greens at Tampere. That course, but hole 6, it doesn't have to. Not every green has to be like that green, which, if you don't know it, has a basically kind of cone shape for half of it, and then it sort of flattens out on one part.
It looks like a giant termite mound or something. That's I don't know, 5 meters tall. It's
You stand at the bottom, and it's at least 2.5 of you looking up, just staring at the basket if you're on the wrong side of that green. But
I love it.
But one side,
I love it.
Yeah.
One side is flat.
Yes, one side is mostly flat. There's maybe two, like maybe 3 meter by 5 meter section that's perfectly flat. That's maybe only 3 meters down from the basket level, and then it kind of slopes off after that, but very slowly at that point. And then there's kind of a hard cut on each side, and then the other 180 degrees of the basket is the super steep, like termite mound slope that you can get just brutal rollaways off of. I've seen some. Luckily, haven't.
But you can always lay up.
Yes. Yep. And that's the point. And I think players on the Pro Tour get very used to going for shots at every turn.
Yeah.
And some don't want to take the moment to think and play that stroke, knowing it could come back later in the tournament, and that could be a good decision later. I think it's too often people look back on a bad decision to run a putt, as opposed to, oh, I made the right decision in laying that one up.
I've seen that too, and it's almost like the sport got pushed in that direction where, as a pro player, you're expected to be aggressive on every shot.
You're expected to be perfect.
Yeah.
You know, because of 18 unders that Paul shot, because of just the skill level increase that was, I feel like from 2020 on, kind of was this extreme jump in skill, and then the courses were almost like struggling to catch up, and they I think all the designers, at least for the Pro Tour events, started to go in this direction of like, how can we make this more difficult without changing too much? Oh my gosh, we got to add a bunch of distance. And I think they quickly did that, and then we pretty quickly kind of made this turnaround, and maybe not quickly, but we've started to turn a corner, I think, and come back a little bit from the maximum distance needed on every course. But this ties to a larger point I want to make about tour and about courses. You both said you got to find a balance, and you were saying you wanted to challenge players a little bit more. You like to be a little harsher with them on greens, perhaps.
Well, not necessarily on greens, but
well, yes, just in general.
I like to see
players struggle.
I've come to take motivation from, I think I said this last episode or two, that and also you got to have patience before taking that tree or that branch if you think it might have significance.
Yep.
Unless you're like with the OB yesterday, no, that's of course it makes it better. But taking a tree is a little bit more difficult to put that tree back.
Yes.
But when I see someone struggle with something, and I've tried the shot many more times myself, and I've come to, okay, if I just throw this Ruru or I can. Oh, this is there is a shot there. It's just super difficult, and it's very demanding, and you have to land perfect or whatever.
Yeah.
In that case, I want to be patient, so I don't make it too easy too fast.
Yeah.
And I like to see players struggle when the challenge is fair.
Yes. Yep. Where I was going with that sort of is that my answer to that question of like how many greens should be challenging on course, I think I agree a lot with what you said about it. It's totally dependent on terrain, obviously, like what you have available to you and what you can do, the level of the course. So it isn't one set number. But I think I want to see the maximum difference between, at least on the Pro Tour, between events of like how challenging can an event be and what aspects can it challenge. And so if a course has a particularly good elevation difference or changes, or the greens are like really, really tricky, I think that's a great course to have on the tour. And then maybe the next week you go to a spot where, okay, the greens are all pretty flat, your putting is pretty consistent, and people are going to make a lot of putts, but the driving is really difficult. And then maybe the next week we go to a course and it is kind of like the preserve, where it's like you really have to score the entire weekend. You can't really be taking double, triple bogeys because that's just going to take you out of a chance to win. You have to be birdieing everything, and then the next week we come to a course like Northwoods Black or something, and you know, par is really good. Well, these days it's not. Players have advanced their skill. That course has now seen 9 unders.
But on a particular hole, par is good.
Yes,
so
yeah, exactly. But finding a way that the tour can have, like, the best players are always going to still stand at the top, right? Like they're going to find a way to be up there in the mix, but finding ways to promote different players in a particular event who have a certain skill set, I think is really cool. You know, where can we see players who have more touch around the green excel?
Yeah,
and then the next event we can see people who throw really far excel. And
because not all properties you can have perfect. I was
Yes.
thinking, again, going back to the trimming earlier today, when I do a lot of my thinking. I was sort of contemplating it. What is a perfect course? People say mixture between open and blah blah blah, but is it really? What would I want to see? I want to see like a W.R. Jackson with some maybe some of the we talked about Fountain Hills with a lot of the water and peninsulas, and that it's really beautiful. Except it's a park and stuff, but just like the idea of like lots of lakes and water, like picturing like the first hole is maybe like similar to Fountain Hills, and then the next hole you get big giant trees, and then you have like a defined fairway going through trees, and then it opens up to wow downhill, and then if not a lot of properties are like that, but
You're almost
if
building
you-
the Jomez dream course. You know, like
Yeah.
it's like you can't do that with every property.
no, we might be able to.
Right.
Someone is visiting us maybe in a month, so
Well, I'm not saying
we
here,
might,
but just in
no,
general.
I'm just saying
Yeah.
that maybe there is something that can take like 2 birdie or die preserve holes, 2 Northwood Black holes, 2 holes from Maple Hill, 2 holes from here, 2 from Fountain Hills, a De La Vega hole. Like, is it possible? I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe. But to have like giant trees, lakes, rock, cliffs, all of that.
Yeah, to have that all in one is special, but I think in general, most of the courses you're going to play are going to have to tailor themselves to a theme, and that's kind of what I was getting at with those tour courses. Is like it's not even tour courses; it's just when you're a designer and you go into a property, you walk it a few times just to get a feel of what the property's like and what you are going to even be able to create.
Yeah.
You know, and so finding the theme for a course, I think, is really important, and what you want it to be and what it can be is an important first step to starting out on a design
And then
project.
you adapt the greens.
Yeah, and if you have the equipment to adapt the greens, you can. Other times, I was in Poland with the Paul Macbeth Foundation, and we were able to install the first course in Krakow recently. And
Beautiful city.
Yeah, beautiful city, and we beautiful park. But the idea was we didn't have a lot of equipment. It was we were able to get enough to pour tee pads and put our baskets in, and but the city didn't even want us really trimming many trees or cutting branches or bushes too much. They didn't want a ton of upkeep or maintenance, and so the challenge for Avery on that design, I was not there. He designed the whole thing, and then I came up and helped install it. But the design challenge there was different than somewhere where you do have access to tractors and machinery and other things that can craft a particular green.
Yep.
And so each project is different, and each project is cool, and there's so many different ways to talk about course design. That's why I love this podcast idea, because you guys have so many different avenues you can travel down and find ways to express and get feedback from others. And it's
But
it's
it
great.
seems like not every property is going to be like Norway. Norway has it all. We've got
Yep.
the elevation, the
Exactly.
features,
Yep.
the water, everything. But you're going to be limited in most cases.
Yes.
But green design then seems to be a way to
Yeah.
add dimension to a hole
Yep.
or add difficulty.
Right.
If you're limited on what you can do
Yeah.
with a fairway or a gap or something.
Exactly. I
So-
think.
That could be somewhere,
Yeah.
an area of design where the designer could get a little creative and force the player to play to one side. Or
100%. I think a great example of this is, I'm going to come back to Tom Bray, and I think it has a great stretch of hole 5, hole 6, and hole 7. Those 3 greens. Obviously, hole 6 is pretty crazy, and that might be a little unachievable for some people, but I think hole 5, that green, it's a par 4. First shot plays kind of straight, and then just out into open field, and you have to beat a corner of trees on the right-hand side, and then you have to get past that so you can throw your upshot down this next fairway. And it's overall pretty open as far as holes go, but then you get to the green, and it's it has a ton of these little aspens or birches. I can't remember exactly which.
Both, maybe.
But maybe both. Yeah, it's eluding me on
Yeah.
what
Yep.
exactly they are. But it forces you to play to this like short, maybe not short, but like pin high left side, because there's a lot of trees short right, and then they curve around the backside of the green, and they're very tightly
You
woven
almost
together.
have to putt like this.
Yeah, there are certain spots where you would have to putt vertical or take a
was it
really wide stance.
Paige Pierce last year actually made a putt through all of
Oh,
those.
too.
Yeah, she did, didn't she? That's a good point. I had forgotten about
But that was... whew.
Yeah, but that's the thing is like certain times it's cool to be able to see that creativity, and then other times it's maybe on one side of the green you plant some cedar trees that go all the way to the ground, and you just don't have anything, and you maybe have to slide the disc underneath the trees, and that's a little bit brutal perhaps, but it goes back to what I was talking about, the approaches of like your approach needs to be short, otherwise you're gonna slide behind those cedars, and then maybe you have to pitch up. But what's really well done about that green is just that it has that open fair side. It has like wood chips inside of one log that's laying there, and then the trees just surround it in the perfect way, where the approach shot that you want to throw is perfectly open.
I think
you
that
have
green,
the green.
also would be one of those that a lot of players would be annoyed at and
Yes.
mad and angry about. This is so terrible.
Yep. and that's one thing that I think I'd love to pose this question to anyone listening to this is how do we get that to seem like a better green? Because to me that's a near perfect green. And I don't know what you guys think.
I like it. I like it. I
Yeah.
remember when I played it, I hated it.
Yes.
Because of
yeah.
course I didn't land where I should have landed.
Right, exactly.
And I had no
so
putt.
it's like, how do we find that? And maybe it's just more players studying the game more and being in the game longer, and that just helps in general, and they start to understand that. But I think there's a lot of players who will complain about shots and about design without remembering why it was done that way. And so I guess I'd pose the question of like, how can we better communicate what we're doing and what we're trying to do, and not have the same level of complaints, and have players understand that it is a challenge, and that's the whole point.
So this is an instance where the course designer has to be stubborn.
Yes.
And at
If
least
they
wait
believe-
for a long time
Yeah.
for a lot of feedback before doing anything.
Yeah.
And it goes back, it's like you said, how many holes? There's only one green like that in Tampa that have that many guardian trees. But
Yeah,
they have
yeah, exactly.
There's thought that has gone into the green design or the whole course. Uzi was on one podcast and talked about how they spent a lot of time on that course and wanted to stay ahead, like we've
Yeah.
talked about, Simon and Ales talked about, trying to design for the future.
Yeah.
And hole 2 also, you have like one like little build up with
Yep.
log and then another. So if you land short, you might not skip up to it. So you have to air it
Yes.
to get close to the basket.
That one's very challenging. You have to go very high. and-
Exactly,
and
it's a weird
kinda
shot,
spike-
but they've
pushing
also
spike hyzer.
they've also tried to push players to have to do shots they don't usually do on at Tampere,
Yep.
which is why it played so hard and why it's still playing so challenging.
Yeah. I'm
'Cause
really excited for the World
there's
Championships.
so many shots there that you usually you're like and you maybe you don't even have time to figure it out in practice.
Yeah.
And then maybe you figure it out after round 1 or 2 or whatever. And also that whole, I think maybe it's a par 5. It has a small pond in front of the basket, in front of the green, which is also really nice.
Yeah. I think that's hole 7. And that was the other
Yeah,
one.
yeah,
I
probably
mentioned
holes.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah, 5, 6, 7 in line have 3 of the best greens on that course, in my opinion. Because 7, is it a par 5? No, I think it's a par 4.
And maybe but
It's a really hard par 4.
I played it, but that's a couple of years ago, so for me it felt like a par 5.
Yeah.
maybe.
No, it's hard. No, I took a pretty big
shot-
number on that one.
I
at the
shot
European Open
plus
last
a
year.
lot on
Yeah.
that course, but
But yeah, that green you're coming into it's almost a similar shot to 2 from the right landing zone of just this stalling hyzer that you really have to pinpoint very well, because there's this big pond on the right side, and then you have nice space to
perfectly
work.
placed pond.
Yes, yeah. I mean, they dug it, so it's where they wanted it, and yeah. But then that left side has OB, and the OB wraps around the back, But I think the green is a good distance. I think the basket is maybe 4 meters from the water, maybe less, maybe 3 meters from the water's edge. But
close,
then it's got, 11 meters maybe at the furthest point, and then it kind of tails in a little bit closer on either on the back and front side, sort of. But it's it's really well done, and those ponds and building those ponds exactly where you want and having those drop offs to the green. It's another thing. I was at Eagles Crossing earlier this year. It's kind of crazy to me at this point how many insane courses I've been to this year. It's I need to start making a list, but that course has those big brick walls that they built that extend out into the ponds.
They have the cake also.
Yes.
Which is
yes.
maybe on the mini golf crazy side a little
that
bit.
One's,
but I still like it.
That one's wild. Yeah.
Because it's wild.
Yep. Yeah, but they're more normal.
Very
greens.
American, I would say. Everything is bigger over there.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. That is a very American style course, if there ever was such a thing.
My wife also said this.
Yeah.
When we watched some skins from that. Yeah.
Yep. But yeah, placing ponds and water.
But there
close
I have a few things on my notes, which is obstacles, OB, and water close. This kind of goes. Is that the same? Like how close do we put obstacles to the basket, and how close do we put water or OB? What do you think, Paul?
Yeah, I mean, should there be obstacles in circle 1? Yeah, I think so. Now, should it be obstacles within 5 meters or closer to the bullseye? Then I start to think, it's a little close. Maybe one tree is good enough, but a whole bunch of stuff, I would make that a little farther from the basket. Maybe 7 to 8 meters at the closest. So it depends.
Is it different with the tree or water or OB?
Yeah, like
you've
you've seen baskets really close to an edge, and then there's certain depth, water or a 600-meter cliff if you're up nearby Stavanger on the rock promoting a new RPM basket.
Maybe I'll cut to that. That was quite the hike.
Yeah, how close can it be? I'd say 3 meters. No closer than 3 meters to a water feature or
OB or
yeah.
Eli?
Yeah, I think that's.
It depends.
It depends. I think I would push back a little bit from just my perspective on the trees being closer. I would say that if you've got a green where you are truly trying to place players on one side of it, I don't care if you have cedars within a couple feet of the basket, or any trees. I just mentioned cedars because they're some of the most thick trees, so you can't really get through them, which kind of is weird because on the one hand, like, you can't get through them from that backside, but on the other hand, you kind of just hit them and stop. It's hard to get through them to the side that's going to be bad on the green. So I think it's a balance. But in general, I think for water and having kind of that edge, I think 3 meters is I think that's fair because you still want players to run their putts. If it's literally the pole has, half a meter, 6 inches even, away from the edge, nobody's running that putt because you either have to hit the cage right on the front side and drop down, or you're going in the water.
Yeah.
Does it depend on the slope also? If it's flat, can it be closer than if it's a slope? Or can it?
I think it should just be one of those things where if you run the putt, a soft run is maybe has a chance to stop. It's not always going to stop, but if you hit the cage on the right side or something, it has enough space that realistically it could still stop. But there's enough risk that it could easily roll too. And
but
it's
if
just
you air it, it's.
But if you air it, it's definitely gone. So slope, sure, it could play in. I don't have super defined things for these, and I think that's one of the cool aspects about course design is there's every person is going to come up to a hole or come up to a green and view it differently, and see that challenge as maybe too tough or maybe too easy. But it's, yeah, I don't think there's a perfect metric for it.
And we're going back then to the stubbornness and course designers, us being like, should we move that OB or not? Should we take the tree or not? Should we? Then, as long as we're ready to dig another hole and pour concrete to move the basket, even if it's just 20 centimeters, because you can always adjust that a little bit.
Yeah.
There would never be an instance where no, the basket has to be here.
Yeah.
Because most of the times you can't move the water. Or digger man can, but
Yeah.
yeah, easier to move the basket than it is to move the water, for sure.
But like, be ready to 17 here, tiny green. I like the green because it was kind of tiny, special. I had never seen a green that small, like 17 was before. But it had the cliff on the right side, so it could potentially land there and you could fall and break stuff, and that shouldn't happen.
Right. Yeah.
So the suggested solution was just put relief on the cliff, and then you had to go to mandatory drop zone to do your putt.
Yep.
And that doesn't take more than half an hour to do, because you spray the relief with blue paint and then you put 2 yellow sticks as a drop zone. Ta-da!
Yep.
But I don't want to do that. I wanted to make a change, improvement that I knew was going to take. In this case, it was 10 or 12 days just to burn that huge pile of trees and branches that we'd put way outside of where you would land on the previous green. But now it was right in the middle of where you would approach to where I wanted to put the new green.
Yep.
And going into it, there was also a week or 2 of work to clear the stuff and burn it, because I don't want to spend a lot of money on a proper wood chipper. I had one, but it broke because it couldn't take the big, and yeah, so we just burn things, the kids come, we have hot dogs, it's all fine. But that, it took me 4, almost 5 weeks to move the basket. And there's still work to do. So I think we shouldn't be afraid to do all that work if it makes it better.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's just dig a new hole and put the basket.
I did think of something while you were speaking about how close the water can be. It's got to be more than like 1.5 meters, because if you're taking relief, you need a meter to take the relief to make your putt. If that line is the OB line, so I guess there is more of a defined thing for water than there is for for anything else. But yeah, aside from that caveat, I think it's kind of up to the designer on their decision and how tricky they're trying to make something.
And what about baskets? Does that go into? Is that a part of the green?
I'm happy to talk about baskets.
You need a basket on the green. I don't think I don't think a basket is a topic for a course design podcast, because we can only choose a basket. We can't do more, really.
Yeah.
Well, we could start a company and build the best basket, but
yeah, I think the one thing I will quickly mention about baskets, just in my opinion, is I want to see more baskets that catch well in the defined area that they're catching in. I think there's sometimes baskets are almost trying to catch too many putts too. Like, I think I see the Mach X, and I to me personally, and this is probably a controversial take because I know a lot of players like the Mach X, but
it's what we've said before. It's subjective, no matter what.
Yep.
Your opinion matters. Everyone's opinion matters. You like this and this one. I like. He likes. She likes.
Yep. But I think the Mach X just, to me, almost catches some bad putts.
It catches those high left ones.
It catches high left ones. It'll catch like it's something way out on the edge, and it hits one chain, and it just pulls it right into the basket. So I think there's some moments where just because you hit chains doesn't mean you deserve a made putt. Right, I think then we're back to playing object golf of the of the 70s and prior.
Yeah. You hit the pole. Done.
Yep. Yeah. Exactly, and that's maybe that is
just have a bucket.
Yeah, maybe that is the definition. I had a neighbor who built his
Cheaper.
own little course and had buckets as the targets.
That's
So,
what
you
we.
know, yeah.
That's
You
how
ever
I
go up?
started too.
Really?
We talked about
Oh, that's
a
funny.
pole with an upside down planter bucket.
Yep.
And so when from a distance
great.
you hit the bucket and just heard a little tick,
Yep.
and you'd look at the guys, huh? You heard it.
Yep.
You heard it. It's in.
Or
Oh,
the
that's
right
great.
side up.
Yeah.
So it has to go in the bucket.
Okay. I like it. Like
Yep.
like James
Different
Naismith
kind of-
basketball style.
I
Yeah,
did see
netball.
a
Because you don't have the backboard.
Yeah, I saw a tournament once where they took the chains on the top off and just played with the pole in the cage, and you had to make it in.
Yeah.
And that was the tournament format.
Maybe more fair,
So-
I don't know.
Yeah, but I think overall baskets, like we got to find the right middle ground where it's catching the putts that it should catch.
But for
and-
us as course
Yeah.
designers,
yeah,
so what we would recommend is do some research and make sure you get a good basket.
yep,
Yeah,
yep.
that's fair.
I mean, again, if I see Mach X on a course, I'm not gonna sit here and complain. Like it's a good basket. It catches a lot of putts, and you know, so my basket critiques are definitely for another conversation of nitpicking on what the Pro Tour should be doing or trying to do.
But we
And,
have recently seen innovation
Yes.
on the baskets, on the Eagles Crossing ones, which I like.
Yep.
They have no knobs and they
yeah.
have heavier chains
Yep.
as when you come closer to the pole, which is similar to the RPM Helix, which we have here.
Yeah.
They have these skirts or the hanging chains
yeah. The
that doesn't give you dead center
Yeah.
spit outs unless you like full power throw a driver into them. But they,
Yeah.
for me, that's the most fair basket I've tried. And there's baskets that for beginners are really good, like the Latitude baskets, because it's a lot wider.
Yep.
But for spin putters, I don't think it's very good.
Yep.
But like, there's just make sure that as a designer, you maybe also choose a basket that will look good on your kind of or type of design
Yeah.
course.
Yep.
Yeah.
They have different colors. They have slightly different designs on the chains and on the cage, and
Yep.
Can we talk about flags on the basket?
yeah, that's a part of it.
Because it
yeah.
is part of the green.
It shouldn't. It's probably not a topic for a whole episode. Flags.
Right,
Yeah.
right. But it's something that we've been discussing here at Leland with player feedback, and now that we have different layouts, we wanted to have a colored flag to designate that colored layout. So you would know, oh yeah, that's our basket. We're playing the red layout. And so yeah, we've started to make flags, sewing with the machine, picking out the right fabric, and
Yep.
we've got the red and the white, the blue and the gold flags to put on baskets, and
Yeah.
that's something we'll be doing soon. And I think that'll actually, at first I thought, a little tacky, you know, but now that I've seen them hanging, they're quite nice. They look beautiful.
Yeah, we
Yeah.
tried it. Put a pole with 3 flags on 18's basket. It's gold, white, and blue.
Yeah.
And as long as the pole's straight, it looks good. We have a slight challenge because the hole on top of the basket is smaller than the inside of the pole, which creates. So we got to do some. Taping, I
We'll
think.
figure it out.
Yep.
Yeah.
What do you think about flags, Eli?
I like flags. I think they're yeah.
That's the name of the episode. I like flags.
Yeah. No. I think the concept is great, and one of the first courses I played when I went to college in Minneapolis, in Minnesota, and there's one of the best disc golf cities in North America. It's been ranked that for a number of years at this point. And one of the first courses I went to play was super highly rated Bryant Lake disc golf course, and that one I believe they're probably playing it for Masters Worlds coming up here
yeah.
in a couple weeks. I
Nice.
forget when that tournament is exactly, but I think it's one of the courses. Anyway, I got there, and they have one of the coolest features I've seen, which is they have, again, colored flags for the correct layouts, because they do have a couple baskets per hole. Not every hole has 2, but a lot of them do. Or maybe they all do. I don't know. Either way, they have wind sockets on there. And so you see the speed of the wind, because the red flag not only designates that basket, maybe, but it also designates 5 km/h wind or
Oh, I
whatever, and then the
see.
yellow is 10 km/h and the blue is 20, and so you're able to get a read on what the wind speed is and the wind direction.
Nice.
And I think that's a very valuable thing for a player to be able to read on the green, and I think it's really
Yeah.
cool and such a such a technical little touch to put on the course.
That's a good thing.
But-
Winds, that you could just add that behind the green, well in the OB, or well, like, so you'll never hit it. Like, we put some ching flags down behind the basket on one,
Yes.
which will turn as a beach flag, but it's not the same. It doesn't tell you the speed.
Yep. Yep.
But a windsock is perfect because it has, like, if it goes this and this and this and it's
Yeah,
different.
right.
Yes. Right. Right.
Yeah.
If it's straight,
Yeah.
it's don't throw.
Yeah.
Go home, come back tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. These ones I was talking about, it's like they're obviously made of different materials, or slightly heavier fabric for each one. So there's multiple to define the different winds. But yeah,
it's
obviously
it's a great idea
typical
to
wind
have
socket.
that.
Yeah.
It's white and orange, and
Yes.
how many
How
of
many
the
of the things,
lines
yeah. Mhm.
straight? It's 10, 15, 20, yeah.
Somewhere where you could see it from your approach
Yes,
shot.
especially like one, and here so many players talk about it, and we talk about it. The wind, you got headwind on one, and you got tailwind, and you got crosswind, and you got
Yeah.
on the whole one. There could be 4 different winds that hit your disc before it lands.
Yeah.
We can't have winds, but it's a
Yeah.
whole 18.
Yeah, because you're in the woods, you don't really feel the wind. You can't. So, but to
Yeah,
have
on
something
the tee you have no clue, and then
Yeah.
by the basket,
you
it's
can feel the. Yeah.
the wind sock.
Interesting.
Yep.
I'm mentally writing that down.
Make a note.
Yeah.
Done.
There we
All
go.
right, this is great. We've been through sloping, obstacles, surface, wood chip, grass, sand, rocks. How big? We touched on that. With if the designer can choose, OB, water close, the approach. You talked about this. Baskets. Match the level of difficulty of the course. Yes. Raised baskets. Not so much.
No.
Raised baskets.
Interesting.
Go.
Yeah.
Paul.
Well, one thing I've noticed about Lily Leland is we've got the raised basket kind of on 18 because it's up on the stump, but there isn't much of that now in Vista del Camino in Phoenix. I've played tournaments, and greens aren't quite as interesting. They've raised the basket up higher to create another challenge. So I get that. But one of the things we have naturally here is the slopes and the uphills and the downhills. So a basket's normal height, but it's up here at the top of the hill, and you're down the hill a ways. Now you're throwing at an elevated basket because of the slope. And now I like that. The artificially placing a basket extra high is Then the other thing to think about is that uphill putt might be a more difficult catch for the basket because the basket's typically designed to catch putts coming straight at it. When you start to throw up at the basket, it might glance off the chains and bounce off. There's the extra challenge there. But I like it when you have a sloping green and the elevated basket is because you're downhill of the basket.
Like hole 4
Yeah, like hole, yep. And
6. some
there's a
others.
bunch of them, 15.
But you can also get a straight putt.
If you're up
On
at the
it.
top of the hill, that's right.
Many times in my elevated baskets, it's always an elevated putt.
That's right. Yeah. So that I like as a piece of strategy or something for the player to think about. I need to land at the top side of the basket.
Because I suck at uphill
Yeah.
putt or putting up.
Yeah, and it's something we faced at the Norwegian National Championships in Sandnes at the courses there, where a lot of the baskets were on a slope, and so you really wanted to get your disc even with the basket, and so that was something you were thinking about on the tee. I need to make sure I'm on the top side.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good opinion. I mean, that's pretty much where I'm at as well. Of like, I don't really love the super elevated baskets just for the sake of elevating them for no reason. I understand it does make the putts harder, so I get it in scenarios like the Memorial and stuff like that. So I don't think it's like, I don't think we should completely eliminate it necessarily, but the more you can do things, like I brought up Ollie 18 again with that tiny little mound.
Yeah.
The more you can do stuff like that and use, I air quote, natural elevation, because not all of it is. I mean, that one is built, and you can build natural looking features. But the more you can do that without putting the basket on an additional pole, the better, because it brings the challenge of the elevated basket without the tackiness, I guess I would say, of just the high up pole.
So, and I mentioned hole 12 is, I think it's 15 centimeters taller
Yep.
than a regular basket. Also 14. It happened by chance because I poured the concrete and then I was all right, I like it. So then and it kind of goes well with the green on 12 and the green on 14 because it's not elevated and well, it is raised because it's a little bit higher, but it's not much. How about that? What do you feel about it?
I'm okay with it. I like it. I think you need to zero in on your aiming point, whether it's here or here or here, and a player should be able to do all three.
Yep.
And if that challenges the player and like at Ala, those players are just a little off, and Ricky hits the band and it comes back and it's like so close. I don't know. That's fun to watch.
That green created some of the most random drama out of like what you wouldn't expect. Like you come into that green and you're just like, oh, they all have open putts. There's nothing to it.
Yeah.
And then it's just subtle enough that for every player we're thinking about it. I mean, I thought about it. I think did I birdie it 2 of the 3 rounds? I think I birdied it twice, and missed my putt the other time. So but all 3 of those putts were like it's in your mind. You're thinking about it. You're like, okay, I got to go up a little more. The wind's gonna affect it a little bit more, and and then picking your spot on the basket to hit on a super elevated situation is very tricky as a player, because you ideally want to hit just over the rim, but that can be tough if you miss just the tiniest bit low, because instead of getting that push forward on the rim is kind of like almost stopping you there as it's trying to move up, and then you can't climb over the rim as easily. So you almost want to hit higher in the chains, but then that kind of brings in the part where you hit higher, there's less speed into the chains, they push it back out. So there's
a smaller target now.
It is a smaller target, yeah. And there's been a lot of talk, if we go back to baskets for the tiniest moment, there's been a lot of talk about, should we shrink baskets or shrink basket sizes? And no, I don't think we should. I think we should find more baskets that resemble RPM's baskets, and then the Mach 7. I think those are baskets that are a good width without being too wide and not being too tall or too short. I think they're in a good... Those are my ideal ranges of width-wise to the baskets, but...
Also, they look good.
Yep. Yeah, and then I think Chainstar Pros also fall in that kind of same level of category. There's a lot of baskets that are close. Obviously, there's a pretty somewhat strict regulations on how a basket's made, but...
I don't think we need to touch on lowered baskets. Do we? That's weird, or... Do we like that?
I haven't seen too many.
No,
honestly.
we accidentally had one last year.
Yeah.
Okay.
At the RPM Open, because we played 2 holes to a shorter basket. FPO played to it the whole round. Once again, I poured it and put the base in, but then it was a basket that I had cut for another base and then on that higher. Base it was higher. But when I put it, and I wasn't the one that moved it, because we only have 19 of the Helix, the original ones. So Andre, the on-course guy at the tournament, he was the one moving it, and he just thought, well, that's probably what he wanted. And it's like this much lower. The cage is almost just like barely off the ground. And I remember, so I think it was Josef Berg who did, or was on coverage, or was it something else? Yeah, because he was filming every round last year. Everything he did, he was doing a vlog, and he was. Now we're on to very. I don't know if I like it or it's kind of cool. I'm not sure. Well, it is what it is. And I didn't realize that. I was like, oh shit, maybe. Well, I don't know.
It's an interesting one. I think it's a little more in that gimmick realm. I have seen baskets. almost interesting for the potential like roller ace type situation, because I've seen baskets like where the cage is actually inset into the ground, and so the top of the cage is flush with the ground level.
I've seen that too.
But I've only seen a couple of them, and I think it's more on that gimmick side than it is on
and
something.
it doesn't look good.
Yeah.
I think. Again, subjective. Everything we say here is subjective.
Interesting. It looks interesting. I don't. I can't tell if I like it or not. You know, it's one of those things. I grew up on a course. The first course I ever played on had a basket that was, you know, maybe a foot off the ground, the bottom of the cage. So it was definitely lower by quite a bit, and I remember that fondly. But that's just, you know, that course has been taken out now since, so it's probably nostalgia for me on that one a little bit. But
and we have some courses that do hanging baskets, basket off rock walls and stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, there's a course, a private course in western Colorado that we've played, and they've got a hanging basket from the branch of the tree, you know.
Right.
And then directly underneath the basket, one of those little kiddie pools. You know? And if you land in the kiddie pool, it's OB.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
So if you hit the cage and it drops down, it's in the little kiddie pool in the water, OB. And it's kind of fun. I mean, I wouldn't design that myself, but it was kind of fun to play and like extra dangerous and scary to put on the basket. But actually, it was creating a lot of fun for the players.
Yeah. I know, so casual around, I would love that.
Yeah. I like that a lot. I think there's I've got one that beats it though.
Okay.
I've got a story. I played in this doubles tournament, and it got rained out, stormed out, whatever. We never finished the doubles tournament, and this was a rule from previous years that I heard about. But they made one of the holes, circle 1 was OB. And you had to go back to circle 2. And so you had to make a circle 2 putt to hole out. And it was doubles. And I heard of some team taking a 25 on a hole, or on that hole, because they just couldn't make a circle 2 putt. And they kept going OB. Dumbest thing I've ever heard. It's like, it's fun. That's fun when you're messing.
I like it.
It's fun when you're messing around with your friends and stuff, and try it. Yeah, but again, that falls in that gimmick realm. We're not putting that in a sanctioned event, but it's kind of cool. I almost want to put it on a hole with my friends where we do that at some casual round at some point, just to like mess around, you know, because at the Pro Tour level, that's almost like viable. You know, you could still take an 8 or a 10 or something, but you're not going to take a 25.
Yeah, especially with doubles. Well, I kind of like it as doubles.
Yep.
So you have 2 chances.
Yep. Yeah. But that one, that's a way more extreme version of
a
little pool.
It goes into, like people have been saying, like the Daniel, fun side events.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah. It has a place. There's a place for those things.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, so I think my last thing is, does it matter when you're designing the green for hole 1, 2, 3, 7, 9, 12, 17, 18? What goes on in the thought process when you're thinking about, let's say, 18 screen? Mm-hmm. How does that differ from 1 screen?
Right. Yeah, it's totally subjective. I think there's no rules to course design. I mean, there are and there aren't. But to me, I think oftentimes players, at least on the Pro Tour level, they want to open up with like a slightly inviting first hole, sort of. You know, maybe not the most challenging of the course. You know, you don't want to open. You kind of open with a middle difficulty, maybe a par 4, give the player a chance to like get into a flow. You know, and maybe that's not what you're going for on the course, and so maybe you put in a harder green on 1. But I think the real key, to me, 1 through maybe 15, the greens, I mean, they matter, and they matter to how that hole plays. But as far as like trying to create drama in a tournament, it's like 16, 17, 18. If you design those greens with as much intention as possible, that's how you're going to get an exciting finish. Because it takes that mentality of sports of where it's like it's never over till the last putt falls, and if you can create that as much as possible, I think that's like the best case scenario. But you don't want to go too crazy, obviously. You know, it needs to be. Again, it needs to maintain that fairness that I was talking about. You know, a player should still be able to play to the correct side of the green or the correct spot on the green and make their putt. And you know, whether or not it has additional challenges. But
European Open,
yeah.
Nokia, the Beast, is a perfect example of 16.
Yep.
What used to be a great rule, the bunker rule.
Are they bringing that back for Worlds?
Oh,
I can't
hope
remember.
so. Oh, I hope so. Probably not, because
there were a lot of complaints about it going last year, so I think it might be
coming
back. I am not gonna go do your own research on that one,
but still, there's that
yeah.
half moon shaped green.
Yes.
Then you got 17, which is like this slope with OB.
Yeah.
Yep.
Then you got 18, the video game hole, which has this
with the
shape.
elevated basket and the big spectator stands. And yeah.
Yep.
You got Överås, hole 18 with the tractor coming
Yeah.
in, and you got that
Yep.
the fjords and it's just
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ale. You talked about Ale screen, USDGC, 17, 18. It's pretty.
Yeah, those are 18 is always you watch it on coverage, and then if you go there in person and play that green, it's so much more elevated, or not elevated. Like the basket is a normal level of elevation for an elevated basket, but the slope, the grade is wild down to that water's edge. It's really makes you think when you're 11, 12 meters about your putt, because it could easily just go into the water if you miss. So
Yeah, but those are all some challenging greens, and then we have our red course. It ends on hole 18 with a par 5, which is eagleable for if you can throw. You don't really have to throw far, but the red course is our easiest course.
Yep.
And it's a big, open, like
Hill.
I don't know what you call it, hill.
It's a hill, and the basket's at the top of the hill. It's just a perfect hill.
Yeah, but not. I don't think you're gonna roll that much on it, really. Are you? Or maybe.
A longer putt.
It's not a hard, tough
Yeah.
green that you're scared of.
Yeah, I think so.
Just to have it in contrast.
It's a little harder for a long upshot to land in the
that's
correct
true.
spot, but the putt itself usually is going to stay near the basket if you miss. I think 18 here at Leyland is a pretty exciting finishing green. And we saw Øyvind Jarnes and Morten Brenna battle it out in Norges Cup this year,
Yeah, that
coming
was-
down to the last hole. And Morten had a chance to tie with a
12-meter putt-ish
Yeah.
or something.
but kind of up at a basket, a little windy, difficult putt.
I think it was almost level.
Yeah, it wasn't
What-
quite.
Yeah,
It was
but
just up a little bit
Yeah.
from that left side. And,
nice.
Øyvind had circle's edge.
well, a little, probably eight
8
meters,
But
but still,
If he
misses,
missed it, then he has a
see ya.
15-meter.
yeah.
Yeah.
And in that case, Morton had to shoot first, and so once he missed, Øyvind was allowed just to lay up. But it would have been exciting to watch his putt if Morton had made it. So
Yeah,
there was a lot of drama down the stretch there.
And also there was a lot of design discussions on our 18 last year, because I told you I had this messenger chat with players that have been here. Then if I have an idea that I'm unsure of, I ask players better than me, what do they think? Should we make it a par 4?
Right.
Have the basket closer with the green? And then Jakob and Clay and Jenny were here 2 weeks before Arpim Open last year, looked at it, talked about it, and then we decided, no, you don't need 18 to be a par 4. This par 3 is so good because the birdie is so hard. It's so hard to get close for a circle 1 putt. Usually your birdie is from a circle 2 putt. And if you make it to where you have a tiny island green as a par 4, it's for the MPO it just becomes way too easy. So we decided to keep it as a par 4 for the FPO and then just keep it. Because we saw it this year with Morten and
Yeah,
it
it's
was
a
so
great par 3. Why, if you're going to change it to a par 4, it has to be better, like you said.
Exactly.
And so it's leave it because it's a great par 3.
Yeah, I think that's it for me.
Yeah, that was fun. That was
was
another episode of the Halfway Cafe.
Another recorded conversation between passionate course designers.
Yeah, and special thanks to Eli Swanson, our very first in-person guest.
I'm honored.
We have heard from other voices that people have contributed their thoughts, and we invite you to do that for this episode too. Tell us, send us your comments. Tell us what you think about green design. Do you disagree with things that were said, or agree, or have your own thoughts? Send it to us. We love to hear those voices. We're creating a conversation here, and getting...
And it's for now it's just easier to have to read them out, because we don't need to have guests on and bad reception and all those things, but we might find a way to have the actual voices and the faces in the future, or we just be a traveling podcast and record wherever we are. Or
So now you
Halfway Cafe on the road.
Oh, it could happen. We should tour America
we'll
sometime.
just park ourselves between hole 9 and 10 on every Pro Tour stop and
Yeah.
just get a few words as players pass by. What do you think about I have this microphone now.
Yes.
Okay. Pack that in the car. Let's go. And so Eli Swanson is the longest tournament ace, and now first in-person guest on the Halfway Cafe podcast. So congratulations.
Thank you, guys.
And we thank you. It's been
it's
you for
just an honor
joining
to have
us.
these conversations. It's like really fun to talk about and learn about all these subjects, and there's not one answer. I've said that multiple times throughout this podcast, and that's why these discussions are cool, and that's why we look forward to hearing your comments and moving forward with great topics.
Yeah, so thanks for joining us. I'm Paul Black, Stian Jonsson, and remember...
Eli Swanson. And remember Eli Swanson.
the closing phrase.
Okay, one more time. I'm ready now.
What is the closing phrase?
Thanks for joining us. This has been the Halfway Cafe. I'm Paul Black. It's Stian Jonsson. And remember...
It can always be better.
There we go. Now I know the closing phrase.
Yeah.
Can always be better.
Yeah, we'll
All
see
right.
you next year.
Yeah.
Come back.
It will be better.
And then
Or
you'll-
it can always be better.
I think it probably
So,
will.
yeah,
Yeah.
I would imagine so.
Get more microphones, maybe.
Another boom hanging.
Yes. Yeah.
Hanging
Hanging
right
from a tree.
I have more.
Okay. Imagine, like, every episode there's
An additional mic.
more mics. We've got them, like, pinned here and here.
Yeah.
I like that. More
Hey,
ships, and
Yep.
at least the audio will be good.
Yeah.
it will be 7-to-1 surround sound.
All
right.
right. Great.
It's a wrap.